Hello everybody. I'm Nicholas here with the American Sustainable Business Council, and on behalf of the ASBC and our strategic partner, Social Venture Circle, and all other panelists, moderators, and partners, I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar on radical inclusion in your workplace. Thank you all for taking the time to join today, and we're looking forward to an engaging discussion on building local economies and empowering people. Before we get started, and for those on the line who don't know the American Sustainable Business Council or are new joiners, I'd like to share that the American Sustainable Business Council partners with businesses and organizations and companies to advocate for solutions and policies that support an equitable, sustainable stakeholder economy. We are a multi-issue business organization advocating on behalf of all sectors, sizes, and geographies of industry. ASBC and our association members collectively represent over 250,000 businesses across our networks. We are coalition focused in our approach to solving the pervasive and systemic issues of climate and energy, infrastructure, circular economy, and creating an inclusive stakeholder economy, all seen through the lens of radical equity and justice. We are changing the rules by which business is done so it is better for all people and the environment. And for those of you that are not members of ASBC, we encourage you to get in touch with us so that you can become a growing part of this network and responsible companies and business organizations. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to our esteemed moderator, Alina Sanchez, the founder of Accelerating Purpose, who will introduce our panelist.
Thank you, Nicholas, and thank you everybody for being here. We are here in service of accelerating more justice and equity in the world. And this webinar on radical inclusion and open hire is brought to you by the American Sustainable Business Council and Accelerating Purpose. Accelerating Purpose is a community of sustainability and social impact action takers committed to breakthrough thinking and doing what it takes to elevate our work to priority status within our organizations. I'm Alina Sanchez, founder of Accelerating Purpose, and it is my privilege to facilitate today's conversation on open hire. You'll hear from leaders who are using this practice to hire hundreds and thousands of individuals while creating more thriving workplaces and communities. So let's talk about radical inclusion in your workforce. And to get us started, I'm actually going to ask each speaker to introduce themselves, tell us your why, and a little bit about your organization and what you do. So I'm going to start with Celia, if you would kick us off.
Thanks, Lena, and thank you so much for having me. It's really a huge honor to be here, and I've had the great fortune of meeting these panelists before, and I'm humbled to be among them. So my why is I spent 15 years working as a criminal defense attorney in LA. And once you've seen the criminal justice system, you can't unsee it. And I have spent my whole career working on changing the justice system. As a lawyer, one person at a time, and now I run an amazing campaign organization that I'm very proud of, where we're trying to shake up the whole system. And we do that by using the voices, the social capital, the power, and the internal capacity of businesses to be great allies and partners to those activists and campaigners on the front lines of criminal justice reform in the US. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Celia. Mark, would you introduce yourself?
Sure. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are. My name is Mark Loranger. I'm the president CEO of Chrysalis. Before I tell you what we do, I came to this work because I had a career as an entrepreneur in corporate America for a long time and had the fortune of selling a company, not enough to relax on a beach someplace, but enough to be more thoughtful about my next move. And as I looked at what was important to me and what was important to the people that I had employed, I saw this significant gap, and I wanted to make a difference in trying to help people get back into the workforce that really wanted to do it, but didn't know how to do it. And I found my way to this place called Chrysalis. We're a LA-based organization that works with people that have been disconnected from the workforce, experienced homelessness, or had interactions with the criminal justice system, and get them back to work. We're going to talk about this a little bit more today, but the way we look at it is a job is, of course, important. It pays the bills. It provides our our sustenance, but it means so much more than that. It's about dignity. It's about self-respect. It's about being able to connect with your kids, your family, and your community. And the men and women that we serve, the 4,000 people that turn to us for services every year at our 5 centers, are ready, willing, and able to work, but something's holding them back. And so that's what our goal is to help them overcome those barriers. In a pre-pandemic year, we would help about 2,500 people secure employment. Last year it was 1,600. So we're happy that we had that impact, but clearly our community was really impacted heavily by the pandemic, and we're really looking forward to being part of that recovery. And we also work very closely with businesses to help encourage them to hire our clients, obviously. So I think I've got a few stories to tell about inclusive and hiring and how it works. I'm really pleased to be here today. Thanks for the invite, Alina.
Thank you, Mark. Joe, would you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. And thank you to the SBC for having us here. And it's great to be a part of this international group of individuals. My name is Joe Kenner, President and CEO of Greyston. We are a social enterprise in Southwest Yonkers, New York. We have a nonprofit, the Greyston Employment Opportunity Center, that provides job skills and education training and certifications and job development to the folks here in our city. But we also have a for-profit, actually New York State's first benefit corporation, Greyston Bakery, that makes the brownie inclusions for Ben & Jerry's ice cream. And we also sell the packaged brownies in places like Whole Foods and Kava. And my fellow panelist, Greg, just enjoyed one recently. So thank you for the business, Greg. But my why, and it's been touched on a little bit here, is through both our bakery as well as our nonprofit, we actually are changing a community. We're changing lives, and through the dignity of work, providing someone a job, someone an opportunity, particularly to those who have been on the sidelines and many times have gotten no when they have said they're ready, willing, and able to work. But Greyston, fortunately, says yes to them. That job just begins a series of changes in someone's life. It changes them, changes their families. But like I said, it revitalizes and changes the community and really energizes the society and an economy. So we are just excited about being able to talk about how we hire today, which is the model that we pioneered, open hiring. So it's a great honor to be here and to really see others interested in transforming other folks' lives.
Thank you, Joe. Yana, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Yana Simone Grammer. I am the co-founder of New Earth organization. And again, thank you, Alina, for inviting me and New Earth to be part of this incredible panel of incredible leaders that are doing powerful, powerful work in the world. My why is, my husband and I started New Earth back in 2004. And our work really began in the Los Angeles detention camps and halls throughout LA County, working with young people who are incarcerated in these places. At that time, LA was the largest incarcerator of young people in the world. And we just couldn't understand why that was happening. But we also knew that it was happening prevalently because a lot of our young people were cycling in and out of the system. So we knew that there had to be a better way, and there had to be something that we could offer in the community that would keep them from going back in. And really that was work. And so in 2013, we started our social enterprises and really saw firsthand the power and dignity that a work opportunity could provide to our young people. And we were able to reduce the youth recidivism rate significantly because of the work opportunities that we provided. New Earth provides, in addition to work opportunities, a high school diploma program for our young people, case management and supportive services, mentorship, and a nurturing place to just land. A lot of our young people are coming to us post-incarceration, and without a real prevalent block, they will end up right back in the system and eventually in the adult prison system. So, I think I've seen firsthand the power of a job and a paycheck and how that shifts lives tremendously. And I'm really excited to be here and talk more about best practices and how more organizations and companies can provide opportunities to those that are severely marginalized.
Excellent. Thank you, Yana. Greg, would you introduce yourself, please?
I'm happy to. My name is Gregg Keesling. I'm the founder of RecycleForce, coming to you live and direct from the Heartland here in Indianapolis, Indiana. And thank you for allowing me to be a part of this very distinguished panel. RecycleForce might look like a electronic or retail return recycling plant, but we're really an employment social enterprise. We're bringing people, high-risk individuals, directly home from prison and jail, and helping them work and gain credentials and skills, and then transitioning them to better jobs. And we're big believers in the idea of subsidized employment, and we have a fair amount of federal grants that help us do our work. And and I have a little bit of a raspy voice today, so I apologize, but I feel fine. So I'm hoping to be able to talk and do a lot. And if only Joe could send me more of the brownies, I'd probably be better. But I did have 4, but I need more. They're really
not going to make any health claims there, but okay.
I know it's okay. But anyway, I'm very honored to be here, and I'm hoping we'll have lots of good discussion here going forward.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you all for being here. I know you are all very busy. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to have a really great discussion. I have a few questions and we're going to jump right in to that. And I just wanted to let our audience know that towards the end of this, you will be able to ask questions of our panelists. So you have those, get ready. But we're going to start off with the question of what is open hire and why is it important? And I'm going to ask Joe to kick us off. I believe Greyston may be the originator of this kind of practice. At least you've been doing it for many, many years. So tell us about open hire, Joe.
Yeah, it'd be a pleasure to. And I should start by giving a big kudos and shout out to the Greyston Bakery team. It was just announced this week that we were designated Best for the World by B-Lab, being one of the top 5% of companies, 4,000 benefit corporations that were certified by B-Lab for transparency, accountability, and all of the things that you're graded for as a benefit corporation and B-Lab certified company. So kudos to my team. I have to give them a shout out. So very proud of them, what the work that they're doing. But open hiring is, as you said, Elena, it's something that Greyston pioneered back in 1982, actually, by our founder, Bernie Glassman. And I like to say that open hiring is inclusive hiring in its purest form. And what do I mean by that? Greyston, the way we hire our folks, it's very much no questions asked. We don't do background checks. We don't do interviews. We don't even accept applications. You just simply put your name on a list. And when the next job becomes available, you get it. Truly, no questions asked, inclusive hiring in its purest form. And the reason why it's so important, particularly in this environment, and if you think about the talk that's going on nowadays, the so-called, I call it so-called labor shortage. I really think it's a company outage in terms of where we're sourcing talent, how we're sourcing talent, where we're looking. We've looked at research and shown that 10 million folks have left the labor force because of some type of a barrier to employment. Mark was referring to some of these earlier, whether it's formerly incarcerated, substance issues, homelessness, but 10 million folks in our country have left the labor force because of one or more types of barriers. And that is a travesty. And about 20% of those folks are opportunity youth. So think about that 18 to 24-year-old crowd. We've computed that if you could, in the next 10 years or so, if we could just get 40,000 jobs, 100,000 jobs to those folks, you're talking about $3 billion of impact. And I think that's a conservative number when you look at the income that's generated, when you look at the savings that you'll get from incarceration costs and justice involvement, money multiplier. That's probably a conservative estimate, but $3 billion of impact if we could get those folks off the sideline and give them opportunities to some of the folks, using some of the folks modeled here that are hiring folks. That is something incredible. There's money on the table, and we can do it through this model that Greyston has pioneered called open hiring. We have been working with companies for the last 3 years to see this model replicated, folks like The Body Shop. And here's the real strong business case for this. The Body Shop, when they first pioneered open hiring in their distribution center in Raleigh, North Carolina, 2019, they saw almost a 2/3 cut in their turnover rate. Productivity went up 13% if you look at it units per hour. Why is that? you're getting great talent, people that want to work. But for whatever reason, and we've seen the qualitative analysis of folks saying, oh, I don't know how to interview, I don't know how to put together a resume. I'm a great worker, but I just don't know how to get started. Through open hiring, and they actually call it inclusive hiring, they gave over 300 opportunities to folks. It was so successful that they rolled it out to their retail operations in the US and Canada. So now over 1,000 opportunities are being provided to folks through companies like the Body Shop. That is a strong business case. Loyal talent, you're cutting your turnover rate, the time that you would normally spend and the cost that you would normally spend to keep people out. Let's think about how we take those same resources and see how we can keep people in, because the job is just the first step. The next step is actually providing all the support that you need. And we're seeing this in this COVID environment now, where folks are looking beyond just the job and seeing, am I safe? What type of training am I being provided? You know, what are the next steps in terms of, if I do this job for a year or two, can I get promoted? These are all things that we have been looking at Greyston for almost 40 years, and we're continuing. I always say we're not perfect, but we're perfecting the open hiring model, because we believe that by just giving someone a job, that's the first step. But the next step is really, how do we help them grow? How do we help them move along in their career trajectory? And how do we invest in them as opposed to investing in keeping them out?
Great, thank you, Joe. That's super helpful. And I want to ask Celia to, from her perspective, and you're coming from a bit of a policy perspective, talk to us about open hiring, why it's important.
Yeah, so our work is to try and kind of change the system, change the structure of the system so that the principles of open hiring and inclusive hiring kind of become the ordinary course of business for people. You know, in the simplest terms, a big piece of the work that we do is taking formerly incarcerated people and making them simply people. So so they can get jobs, so they can pay taxes, so they can drive their kids to school, so they can vote, so they can get an education. And these are all of the things that actually get severely limited when you have a criminal conviction. And one of the ways that we're doing this is we're trying to make it so that people who have served their time and have completed all of their conditions of release are allowed to get jobs. And that sounds like a very, very low bar, but, you know, picking up on what Joe said, 9 out of 10 employers use background checks, and applicants with a criminal record are 60% less likely to get a call back. So I think it's worth kind of really briefly talking about how hard it is to get your criminal record expunged in America. So expungement is a process whereby once you've served, if you have an eligible qualifying conviction and you've served your time and a period of time has taken place after that conviction and that sentence is complete, you ought to be allowed to have your record sealed, to have your record expunged. If we look at the federal system, regardless of how low level your conviction is or how long it has been since your conviction took place, you can never get your record expunged. You can only get a presidential pardon. That is the only way to kind of wipe the slate clean on a criminal conviction. And if you're kind of sitting there thinking, well, federal convictions sound like a pretty big deal, I'd like to talk about pig-based destruction. So if you bear with me for a minute, let's say you have a pig and you let your pig enter a fenced-in area on public land, and that pig might destroy some grass. You've committed a federal offense. If you let your dog bark in a national park, you've committed a federal offense. And if you have ever been hunting around for some Wi-Fi, perhaps you have to get on a Zoom webinar and you're looking for some open Wi-Fi and you find an open Wi-Fi and you use it, that Wi-Fi squatting is actually also a federal offense. So the bar for federal offenses isn't very high. And like I said, if you get a federal offense, the only way to get it off your record, to get it sealed, is for a presidential pardon. And even in states where there is a process of petitioning to have your record sealed, that process is so time consuming and complicated. It's one of the things that I used to do as a lawyer, that only about 6% of people who are eligible to have their record expunged actually get their record expunged. So the fix is pretty simple, right? The problems are kind of drastic and the fixes are pretty simple. The fixes are, at the federal level, we need legislation that literally creates a process whereby people can ask for their records to be expunged after an appropriate period of time. And in those states where that petition-based system already exists, we need to automate the process of doing this. This is happening. There's 5 states that have already done this, and it literally looks like running a software program through the court's records so that that software program finds the records that are eligible and automatically expunges them and then notifies the person that their record has been expunged. And this process, like I said, it affects a lot more than your ability to get a job. And I really appreciate the fact that we're talking about the word dignity rather than wage, because I think that is what we're going for here. It's a lot more important to get a job than simply to feed your family. Of course, that's very, very important, but there is a dignity element to this that we need to underscore 3 times and highlight in red. But also 4 out of 5 landlords use checks in terms of eligibility for renting a house. One of my wonderful and dear friends in this movement, her husband has a criminal conviction. He is so amazing and life-changing that he actually was listed in Time Magazine's 100 Most Influential People in 2019, and yet her husband could not get a rental property. She said she was kind of holding the Time Magazine article up at the rental center and saying, he's a very respectable person. How can we not get a rental application accepted? This also extends to access to education, to loans, and the work that my friend, her husband is Desmond Meade, has been very pioneering on is accessing your right to vote, which can be blocked. You can also get limited in the types of jobs you can get licensed to do. In California, you could not until recently become a firefighter if you had a criminal conviction. For those of my friends on this panel who live in California, we all know who is fighting California wildfires, and it's currently incarcerated people. And until very recently, the day that you left the prison gates, you were ineligible to apply to be a California firefighter. And this extends to all sorts of stuff like cosmetology license to cut hair and things like that. So this is the work that our organization does, is we're looking for those systemic barriers to people getting back on their feet and getting a job. And we are systematically changing them through legislation and policy, and we're doing that with businesses by our side.
Excellent. Thank you, Celia. So we are now going to hear, what I'd like to hear from each of our panelists is either an example, a specific example or story that you can share with us today that demonstrates the work that you do in this area. And so, Greg, can you hear me? Because I'm going to start with you. If you can give us an example.
I didn't quite hear the question. If you could say it again.
Yes. So we're going to, each panelist, and starting with you, we're going to share an example or story of the work that you're doing.
Okay. So we're serving people that are deemed high risk, often for the crime they committed. And so we have quite a number of people that are charged as juveniles for serious crime, and they may do 20 or 30 years in prison, but yet they come out and they're 40 years old. So we've got some really wonderful stories of people that have come into the program that have been able to work in our process, connect with our city, because we've actually, some of the barriers like licensing and cosmetology, we've got rid of all those. So a lot of our lower level folks that we don't serve are able to go back in their jobs, but people that have committed a pretty significant crime who we have no involvement in releasing, but they're released. And rather than have them wander around the city, our city with nothing to do, we're able to work with them. So we got right now today, 21 people that have come out of the program with pretty significant crimes who have been able to go through the program and get hired into the union at the Indianapolis Department of Public Works. And so they're working on various infrastructure projects and just wonderful. We have a man that had 2 life sentences for drug dealing, who's now the head of, or the second in charge of the union at the Indianapolis Department of Works. So these are the stories, and it's the thing that I tell everybody. Often the people that were charged with the most significant crimes have spent the longest time in prison or jail are the individuals that can become the greatest assets in the workforce. But you need a system. They're going to be monitored very heavily by oversight when they come out. And you need a way that they can step through that to prove to the courts that they have left crime and significant crime. And so those are our stories. We just got, hundreds of people now that are all over the city. We're developing now what we call peer leaders. These are the same individuals that have been down for a long time who come out, who now are helping employers and other companies hire the same groups that are coming home. And our unemployment rate is so low here. We are getting lots of, I've never had this much opportunity in my 25 years for hiring people with felony records. It's quite amazing. And again, we're parole, probation, community correction in our state has a requirement to get people a job. And we're getting referred the individuals that they can't place because the severity of their crime scares people. And it's liability insurance makes it very, very difficult. A lot of times, employers are screening out certain types of crimes. Murder and manslaughter are, sadly, people make terrible mistakes. But if you've done 30 years of prison, you come home. 99% of all I had a guy 43 years in our program. He was down for 43 years. He was only 60 years old when he came into our program, and he'd been on death row for 28 of those 63 years. And he needed a place to go. He's now a supervisor for another program similar to ours. So anyway, those are some of the stories and maybe a little bit of our background that we're trying to go after people that society's kind of afraid of and help them transition into, while preserving public safety, help them transition into normal lives.
Yana, tell us a story. Give us an example of work in Greyston. And you're on mute.
So sorry about that. I was unmuted and now I'm muted myself. Okay. So, I want to just maybe talk a little bit about our process because, we have many success stories. And I think for us, we hire alumni youth who've participated in our programs at the juvenile detention camps and halls, or young people who reside in neighborhoods that are severely over-criminalized and underrepresented. When young people come to our center, every single one of them is assigned a case manager that works to create an action plan for their success. That would include earning a high school diploma if they don't have one, which allows them to be competitive in the world of work. We have a high school on site that allows them to work on their high school diploma while they're working with us and receiving services. That action plan could also include career goals, family goals, educational goals, and personal goals. We believe that the road to success includes holistic whole person care. And if our young people are dealing with a plethora of barriers, then they won't be able to get ahead in not just our workplace, but any workplace. So our intention is to work together with our members to remove those barriers as much as we can so they can focus on work and school and achieving their goals. So many people take for granted the fact that, you can get up in the morning, go to work, do your job, focus on work and come home. But a lot of our young people don't have that luxury. They have severe barriers in just getting to the workplace. Sometimes they travel 2 to 3 hours on various forms of public transportation through various, gang neighborhoods that they don't feel safe in just to get to work. So just arriving to work, forget about arriving to work on time, just arriving to work is a victory in and of itself. And then through the day, they face 100 of these different types of barriers. So really, ultimately, our focus is not just to provide a job, because that's great. That's access to opportunity, but to really, really understand what are the barriers that would prevent them from not just being successful with us, but being successful anywhere.
Thanks. Mark, do you have an example or story that you can share that demonstrates the work that Chrysalis does?
I mean, how could you tee it up better? Do I have a story? I got stories all day long. But I think you're hearing a common theme here, which is the job is almost a means to an end, right? It's paying the bills, but it's about life. And the folks that all of us serve have had some challenges navigating life. And we're using the job as a way to help our clients work on all of these challenges, right? If all you needed was a resume and you walk down to the unemployment office and you got a job, I wouldn't have a job. My organization wouldn't need to exist. But the folks that we serve are not well served by that system. They need the intensive case management, trauma-informed care, and addressing of all of the stuff as Yana was talking about. So in our world, we've got 4 employment social enterprises that we operate. Tomorrow's payday, and I think 725 of our clients are getting paid tomorrow. And to run those businesses and the programs that we operate, I've got 200 professional staff, full-time staff employees. Fully a third of them are clients that have been selected because of their skills and their leadership ability to be full-time staff members, and they supervise most of the work that is being done in our businesses. They are the hardest working, smartest, most loyal, dedicated people I could possibly hire. And yet, as Gregg was talking about, some of them, if you were to look at what might have happened 20 years ago, you might think twice. And that's where I think, and we'll talk about this, I think, in a few minutes, where businesses often make the mistake is that happened when they're 16. And are we going to judge somebody based on the worst thing they did at the worst moment in their life? Or are we going to look at potential? Are we going to look at what they can do as opposed to the worst day of their life? So I'll just tell you about one guy, Antonio. Antonio started in our program after 20 years in prison, did all the things, found his way to us through a halfway house, came through our program, was referred to one of our social enterprises that does street cleaning and sweeping stuff, pan and broom sweeping, graffiti removal, nothing glamorous, but he really took to that work, did a great job, impressed the supervisor, showed up every day, worked with the team, promoted him to a lead, then a driver, and then we hired him as a supervisor. And he ended up moving into a contract that we have with the California Department of Transportation, doing highway maintenance work, leading a crew. He was so good that Caltrans hired him as a staff member. So now he's making, 65, 70 a year in the union, great benefits, career track position. He and his wife bought a house. His wife came through our program as well with a similar background. He's living his version of the American dream. And I'm glad we were able to play a small part in helping him do that, but he did the work. But we had to believe in him and then convince an employer, in this case, the State of California Department of Transportation, to believe in him. But I think that's really at the core of our work, is helping clients believe in themselves and then finding employers that are also willing to believe in them and that potential.
Excellent, excellent. Joe, do you have a story or an example that would demonstrate Greyston's work?
Yeah, like Mark, I could probably tell stories and give examples all day. We had an excellent group of students from Westchester Community College put together a documentary on Greyston not too long ago. We did a premiere for it. And it told the story of 3 individuals. One was a single mom, another one was a returning citizen, formerly incarcerated, and another one was somebody who actually had English as a second language. So when we think about barriers, single moms, language, those are barriers as well in some cases. But I'll tell the story of the single mom. Her name is Shauna. She a mother of 5. She had applied for I don't know how many positions, and in her words, she wasn't male enough. She didn't have the experience. She didn't have the education. She could not get a job to save her life, and it wasn't due to a lack of trying. But as she says, when everyone else said no, Greyston said yes. This is a few years ago now. Shauna was probably at the lowest point of her life, to the point where she was about to give up her 5 kids because she just couldn't take care of them. She could not find a job, and she was going to give up her kids. I think it was to the day that she was about to make that decision, she gets the call from Greyston. You got the job. And not only that, you got the job on the PM shift, which is perfect because she has 5 kids. As I said, that was a few years ago. She started out as an apprentice. She's now our lead operator at the bakery, and she has all 5 of her kids with her. You can't put a price tag on that. You can't, you just can't, I can't talk about that enough, because it shows just how resilient these folks are. And again, it goes back to, they want to work. That's not the issue. It's just the barriers that are in front of them. They have to overcome them, and it's up to business community, it's up to business leaders like all the folks on this panel and those who are listening to rethink and have a mind shift in how we hire and where we're looking, because the folks are out there and you're missing out on some good talent, and you're missing out on telling some great stories, but like the ones you're hearing right now.
Got chills, and I'm sure many of you have them too. Thank you. Celia, tell us an example, give us an example or share a story, please.
How do I follow these four? Seriously. I'd like to pick up on something that Gregg started us with, and talking about stories and talking about young people and people serving very long sentences, and tie this back to kind of barriers. So we were asked to work by our campaign colleagues in Ohio on ending juvenile life without parole, which is exactly what it sounds like. It is the practice of sentencing children to prison. And when they go to prison, they will never have an opportunity to even present the argument for release to a parole board. And you tell them that when you put them in. And the only way those children can ever get out of prison is if you change the law and end that practice of sentencing children to life without the possibility of parole. So our colleagues in Ohio had come round 4 or 5 years in a row and got stuck at the exact same spot in the legislature on this issue. And they asked us to help. They felt that businesses were the voices that they needed to push them over the line and to clear this hurdle, this tipping point hurdle that they'd been at year on year. They had a very, very specific identity of business that they felt would be helpful in the state. They wanted in particular to focus on manufacturing, construction, retail, restaurants, in a very nice way. They didn't want kind of coastal, like, the sort of progressive businesses. They wanted heartland Ohioan businesses. They had to be from Ohio. And we had 6 weeks to put this work together. We immediately started reaching out to businesses that we knew in the state. And we also focused primarily on businesses that we knew were hiring formerly incarcerated people in the state, because we figured that they would get this. And I remember the first conversation I had was with a guy called Dan Meyer of Nehemiah Manufacturing. And if you don't know him, he's everyone's hero in this movement. And I was like praying that he would get this juvenile life without parole thing, because it's not quite what he'd been doing. He'd been working on workforce stuff and hiring people, but I was asking him to end a law and a practice of sentencing children that have, let's be honest, done the worst things in the justice system. And, I think we need to challenge ourselves to not kind of look at people that have just the lowest level offenses or the smallest mistakes. Like, somebody can change as much when they've committed a big mistake as much as if they've committed a small mistake. And I remember the first conversation I had with Dan, and he was just like, wait, I have this habit of speaking very quickly with an English accent. And he said, wait, are you telling me that in Ohio, we still sentence kids to prison for life and we won't let them out? And I was like, yeah, that's basically what juvenile life without parole is. He was like, I'm in, count me in. And so then we got a whole bunch of Ohio businesses. They wrote letters, they called legislators, they wrote op-eds, they appeared in the media. And guess what? Juvenile life without parole is over in Ohio. And we all know that those businesses pulled us over the line. Yeah. And we're coming around again for bail reform and ending the death penalty in Ohio and a bunch of other states.
Nice. You go. Great example. And so now we're going to move into the practical piece of this. So how is this done? What are the key steps to activating successful open hire practice? So I'm going to ask Mark if you would kick us off on what do you see are the key steps?
Sure. Well, I'll offer a few bullets and then an example of a partnership we have that I think will work. First of all, it has to be a priority with intention. And we all want to feel good about doing the right thing for the community and say the words, but saying the words is not enough. So you got to set up a structure to do it and the supports. It's not saying that the population that we work with, that they can't be fantastic employees, but they got stuff going on. And so you got to understand things about transportation and scheduling, and the fact that perhaps they haven't worked in a traditional structured work environment, perhaps ever. And that's going to take some transitional time and experience. And working in a social enterprise like we run, all of us on this collar experience with is part of the reason we have those social enterprises. But businesses can do this themselves, right? Through peer support groups, through mentoring, through buddy systems, through just open communications and conversations. And let's just get real about what the challenges might be and how can we get around them. We can't remove barriers all the time, but we get really good about driving around. So that's my biggest piece of advice. A good example of what we're doing in Southern California is with the Disneyland Resort. Disneyland, they have a reputation. Anyone who's been to Disney World or Disneyland knows it's got to be perfect and everything's pristine and everybody wears the little uniforms and all that stuff. We got to look. And they call their employees cast members. They're not even staff members. They got a thing. We opened an office in Anaheim 3 years ago. They were a really philanthropic supporter of ours. We developed a relationship with the guy that was the head of the park at the time. And he said, the money's great. I think the money's great too, but let's do more. How can we actually make a dent in changing our hiring policies so that we can be more open and inclusive to the community? And he told his HR team to make it happen. It was not easy. It's still not easy. They're a humongous company with reams of reasons to say no, but because the guy at the top, and it was a man, so it was a guy, he made it happen. And we have been able to open up doors of opportunity at the largest employer in Orange County that had been shut for many, many years. And to me, when we can do that type of thing with major businesses, then my job is done. If every business was willing to be thoughtful and invest the time and energy into making this a priority and realize it is going to take some work to make it happen, then we wouldn't have to have conversations like this, because employers would get it. And they would see that it is not only the right thing to do, it's a smart thing. It's really a good business move. Someone earlier was talking about retention rates. And this is what we hear from our employers all the time. The folks that we place at organizations tend to stay 2 to 3 times longer than other candidates that are similarly at entry level or similar jobs. So there's something about our programs and that real drive that our clients have that make it a smart business decision.
Excellent. So making it an intentional priority, creating the supports, is there anything else that comes to mind from the rest of you that you feel are key to creating a successful open hire practice?
I'm just going to quickly say that in Indiana, you can vote. Every felon can vote. You can't vote when you're incarcerated, but you don't have to have a judge re-enfranchise you. And so that's been the key thing why I think we're winning. I hope there's none of my state legislators on this call listening, because everybody doesn't believe the folks coming home vote. In Indianapolis, there's 120,000 felons. There are 14,000 today that are under criminal justice oversight and parole, probation, and community correction. We've got this secret little thing of getting them to vote. We're turning elections. And I encourage everybody out there listening to push hard for voter access for people coming home, like we have in progressive Indiana. I feel so amazing sometimes. But mostly the people don't think they can vote, and the public doesn't think they vote. So I'll just say that real quick before we're out of time, because I know we're going to be short.
Yeah. Okay, so we have just a couple more questions and then we're going to get to your questions. So there are pitfalls in this work. These people that you see in front of you work so hard to make this goodness happen. And so I want to hear a little bit about the pitfalls and challenges and how they can either be avoided or worked through. And I'm going to ask Yana, who I know with New Earth has established so many different social enterprise initiatives. You've seen this one way and another. So share a few of those with us and how our audience can, maybe anticipate and avoid some of the things that you've learned the hard way.
Sure. So, our organization didn't start as a social enterprise. We started as a youth program in probation camps. And our social enterprise came out of a need that we saw that was so strong and so powerful with our young people. So obviously, the pitfall we experienced was definitely a trial and error situation, but it really opened the door to a lot of new ways that we now do business. So, one of the common pitfalls we faced is assuming that everyone has the same fundamental commitment to equity and radical inclusion and open hire as we do. In our early days, we secured a large customer who subcontracted the organization to provide digital media services. This was a huge contract for us, allowed us to employ hundreds of young people, really helped us just increase the capacity, the financial capacity of our organization. And a lot of our young people obviously were coming out of the probation camps. Many of them didn't have, never held a job before, much less one of such high demand. So on our end, we felt that we did a great job providing the training to our young people that they needed to execute the job that was required. And because the customer was subcontracting us, we had the flexibility to have our workforce deliver the services on site at our location. So we created a workforce incubator of sorts, ensuring that our youth were able to make mistakes and learn corrections without the risk of losing their jobs. We had this relationship with the customer for 7 years. And during the pandemic, they ended the relationship because they felt they could just get better service and cheaper service elsewhere. So, social impact doesn't always equate to profit for many businesses. And we just we couldn't figure out a way back then to communicate the beneficial impact that this partnership had for both the organization and the youth who we hired to perform these jobs. So now we've become masters at communicating the double bottom line benefits to all of our workforce partners. We also include a diversity and inclusion training and checklist that allows us to provide resources to our business partners to install practices at their organizations that contribute to open hire and diversity in the workplace, as well as a way that we're able to evaluate partners internally to ensure that our mission is aligned and that our core values and commitment is aligned with equity. And I think, that really has allowed us to do business in a different way and to let go of some partners that just weren't aligned with our vision.
Thank you. Any of the rest of you, any key pitfalls that you would recommend our audience avoid, or ways on how they can avoid them?
I'd love to add that that you don't need to be perfect. I think one of the things that we see a lot is that businesses are so worried about having their house in order, fully in order before they do anything. And I actually think that can be a little bit paralyzing. Of course, businesses need to walk the walk if they're going to talk the talk. But if you're actually worried about consumer expectations, there was a data study done on this, which showed that 83% of American consumers actually feel like it's fine for businesses to not get it completely right, as long as they are trying to get it right, as long as they're doing something. So I would say don't get paralyzed by, don't let perfection be the enemy of the good, on anything that you're doing.
And I would just follow with that. I mean, the one thing we didn't mention is just the overall fear some folks have of looking at open hiring or inclusive hiring. And I like to just tell folks, you don't have to jump in at the deep end. You don't have to do it exactly like Greyston do, no questions asked. You can do some form of inclusive hiring that maybe focuses on a particular population, whether it's single moms, whether it's the formerly incarcerated, opportunity youth. We've been doing this for the last 3 years through our Greyston Employment Opportunity Center, working with people like The Body Shop, a small business in Rochester. We've set up regional hubs, one in Rochester. We are setting up one in New York City. I'm going to set up another one in Westchester County. But we're working with companies to figure out what would it look like within your organization. And maybe it's not your whole operation. Maybe it's one job or two. But if you get many employers doing this, there is a nice ripple effect that happens when folks are looking at hiring and employment differently and the impact that that can have. And you can make a profit too. You can provide a product and a service at very high quality like we do and like we have been doing for 40 years. So there is a both and not an either or in terms of bringing folks into the organization and making a profit.
Thank you so much for saying that as well, Joe, because I feel like businesses look at companies like Greyston and think that it's amazing and unachievable. And I think when you hear Joe say, you don't have to be a Greyston to be making change, it's like a big permission for companies.
And I'll just say really quickly that people do fail. I want you to see me watching my phone. We're doing a welfare check on one of our young ladies that we're very worried about. She was doing so well. And we now have this worry that something bad is happening. And so, you know, but we can't make policy or create our social enterprises around the outlier. You have to prepare that, you know, everybody's going to have a Willie Horton if any of you are old enough to remember that story. And, you know, these are the things that will happen. There's going to be failure, and you have to seal yourself to be able to move through it, you know, and not give up because a few people do fail, because we're all human beings. And that's the key part. We're successful when we fail, and we can often do both all the time.
That's so important. So I'm going to ask the audience you can go to the Q&A box and ask some questions. And while you're doing that, I'm going to ask for each of our panelists to just share one last thought or recommendation with our audience today. We're coming very close to the top of the hour, and we only have a few minutes left. So please, just one comment, short comment. And Yana, let's start with you. What last words of wisdom do you have to share with our audience today?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo a lot of what everybody said around not having to be perfect. But I would recommend that if there's a particular practice that your organization, your company wants to take on, embed it in your core values, put it in your policies and protocols and procedures, include it in your staff trainings and your meetings, because, you know, without that, it's just an idea, it's just a thought, it's just a goal. It's not really being put into practice. So I just find that, you know, it really should feel like your company is overall throughout the company, an open hire company that is committed to equitable practices.
Excellent. Celia.
I'm going to issue a call to action, and I'm going to say that folk listening need to commit a percentage of their budget or capacity over the next 12 months. If they want to commit a percentage of their lobbying, their public affairs, their CEO advocacy, do that. If you want to commit a percentage of your HR time, do that. If you want to commit some of your marketing and communication strategy to being evangelical about this work so that Yana's client doesn't dump her in a pandemic, please do that. And I'm going to say you need to set it at 50%.
All right. Okay. A challenge has been set. Joe.
Yeah, I'll issue another call to action too, and ask folks to just go to greyston.org and connect with us and sign up for our newsletter. We'd love to work with you through our Greyston Employment Opportunity Center. If you're considering looking at open hiring or some form thereof, that's what we do. That's what we're all about. So please go to greyston.org, connect, partner with us, and we'd love to work with you.
Greg.
Well, there are 2.2 million people that are going to be coming home from prison, and we don't have enough social enterprises. So you should all go out and begin to start your own employment social enterprises. And you can get advice and help from the American Sustainable Business Council and SBC. And I'm trying to answer a question in the chat about transgender. We are serving quite a number. Half of all African-American transgender end up in prison. And it's a very frightening status. People come home and very traumatized, but I can't figure out how to answer the question. I'm trying to, but Anya has asked that question in the chat, and it's a big, big, big issue.
Great. Mark.
I think the reason the folks have joined us today, and you wouldn't be part of the ASBC if you didn't believe in a better future and making our society and our country a more sustainable place, whether it's criminal justice reform, equity, social justice, homelessness, all of these things are related, right? And money is what connects it, and it could be tax dollars, but it could also be the way, as Celia was suggesting, corporations choose to invest their resources, which means changing policy and practice, which creates opportunity for the women and men that we serve. So if we are serious about addressing these intractable problems we seem to have in our country, then this is one of the things we got to get really serious about. More than lip service, we got to do it.
Excellent, thank you. So we have a couple of questions. I think Greg was answering part of this, but I'm just going to ask this, see if anybody on our panel can answer this question. What do your programs do, and what can businesses do to provide mental health resources and compassion for employees? Anybody have an answer?
Yeah, we actually, at both the bakery and the foundation, we employ case managers on the foundation side, but we also have a social worker that sits at our bakery and goes through a host of the issues that the person just outlined. Her name was Anya. And a lot of folks are dealing with substance issues. They're dealing with anger management, child support, child care. I mean, there's just a whole host of things that keep people from being productive, both personally and professionally. So we believe we want to invest in someone being at our bakery on our site to help our employees and all of our employees, not just the open hires, through those issues.
Okay, excellent. Well, I want to thank our panelists, and I want to thank ASBC who's hosted us. If you're not already a member, like some have said, please join. And if this conversation has sparked interest or action in you, we want to continue the conversation. So let us know about that. I'm going to pass it back to Nicholas, who will wrap it for us today.
Yes, I just want to echo Alina there. We want to thank all of our panelists and speakers for joining us, and for all of the attendees for joining. This has been a fantastic event. Please feel free to be in touch if you're interested in joining our collaborative effort to move these issues forward. Thank you again, and have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thanks. Great being with all of you.
Yeah, same here.
Thank you, everyone.
Pleasure to see you
Joe,
guys.
brownies, Joe, brownies, Joe.
Yeah, next time in person and brownies.
Next time in person, we'll have snacks.
Excellent.
Thanks,
Great
guys.
day to all. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye now.